All right, everyone. Hello. This is Mr. Crawford, and welcome to Trig Lesson number 2. If you have not viewed and done the practice for Trig Lesson number 1, I would highly recommend you go do that one first. Otherwise, this one might not make a whole lot of sense to you. So, excuse me, last time we talked about the three primary trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent, right? Abbreviated sin, cos, tan, like so. Well, today we're going to talk about the fact that there are three additional trig functions. They are the reciprocals of each one of these three. And if you don't remember, the word reciprocal, write it here, just means a fraction flipped over. So any number A over any number B, if you flip that and change it to B over A, you have its reciprocal. These two fractions are reciprocals of each other. The reciprocal of sine is something known as cosecant. It's abbreviated CSC, cosecant. The reciprocal of cosine is something known as secant. And the reciprocal of tangent is something known as cotangent. And so you might be asking, how are these things reciprocals? Because doesn't reciprocal have to mean fraction? And you're right, it does. Remember last time we discussed the acronym SOHCAHTOA to help us memorize what sine, cosine, and tangent stands for in any type of right triangle situation, right? Sine always stood for opposite over hypotenuse. That's the fraction we need to find the sine of an angle. Cosine, we need the adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent, we need the opposite over the adjacent. Well, if these three are the reciprocals of those, then the way you find cosecant is you just take sine and flip it over. Since sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosecant would be the reciprocal, hypotenuse over opposite. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so you'd get hypotenuse over adjacent. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, so you would get adjacent over opposite. Take a look at this right triangle I've drawn off to the side here. Each of the legs measures 6, and the hypotenuse across from the right angle is 6 times the square root of 2. You'll see a lot of radicals in trigonometry, which is one of the reasons that I think the last lesson I did with you guys involved simplifying radicals. This just means 6 times the square root of 2. Square root of 2 is some small number, 1 point something, so it's not a very big number, but it is bigger than just 6, okay? All right, so can we find the sine of this angle, sine of theta? If sine is opposite over hypotenuse, well, who is opposite angle theta? 6. What's the hypotenuse? 6 square root of 2. So we can write 6 on top, 6 square root of 2 on the bottom. Now technically, this can be simplified, but we're going to work on that a little bit later on. So for now, you can leave it just like this if you want. What about the cosine? Well, the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So here is my angle. Theta is what this is called, by the way. I don't know if I addressed that before. But this symbol, theta, is a Greek letter. Theta, T-H-E-T-A. And it just means an angle. It's just like x or y. It's a variable. It's an unknown thing right now. We don't know how big that angle is. Maybe it's 36 degrees. I don't know. But it's unknown, so we're calling it theta for the moment. All right, what about the cosine of theta? The adjacent side, 6. The hypotenuse, 6 square root of 2. So in this situation, the cosine and the sine turned out to be the same thing. What about the tangent of theta? Tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. So opposite is 6, adjacent is 6, so you get 6 over 6. Now, maybe you're astute enough to know that that actually divides and makes 1, but again, if you left it as 6 over 6, that's okay for right now. How about their reciprocals? Cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Those are these three just flipped over. So since we already have the answers for these, if we just flip them over, we got the reciprocals. So the reciprocal of sine, cosecant would be 6 square root of 2 over 6. Because cosecant is supposed to be the hypotenuse, which is 6 square root of 2, over the opposite side, which was 6. So we have that. Same is true for secant. You can flip it over. 6 square root of 2 over 6 will give you the secant. And then the cotangent, you can flip over 6 over 6, but you're just going to get 6 over 6 again, which again equals 1. Right? Okay, how about you guys for your practice, try this. I have a 3, 4, 5 classic right triangle. We know 6 trig functions now. Okay. I want to see if you can name all of these. Number 1 is cotangent, 2 is sine, 3 is cosecant, 4 is tangent, 5 secant, 6 cotangent. Notice where the angle is. Angle theta is located up here. So think about who its opposite side is, who its adjacent side is, and what the hypotenuse is, right? Make your fractions, see if you can get them all. I recommend that you pause the video here and try them all on your own before I show you the answers here in just a second. So pause now. And you should be finished. Let's take a look now at the answers. The cotangent of this would be the hypotenuse. I'm sorry, the adjacent over the opposite, right? The adjacent side was 3, and the opposite side is 4. So I believe you should get 3 over 4. The sine of theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The opposite is 4, the hypotenuse is 5. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so if sine is 4 over 5, cosecant has to be 5 over 4. Tangent is always equal to opposite over adjacent, so opposite 4, adjacent 3, you will get 4 over 3. Not to mention that tangent is supposed to be the reciprocal of cotangent. So if cotangent turned out to be 3 over 4, flip it, you get 4 over 3. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. We haven't found cosine yet, so let's take a look here. Angle theta. Think about what secant stands for. If cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, then secant would have to be hypotenuse over adjacent. So the hypotenuse is 5, the adjacent is 3, so I believe the secant is 5 over 3. And finally, that leaves us with cosine, which is the reciprocal of secant. We were just talking about it. Flip that over, 3 over 5, and you have your answers. All right, feel free to do any kind of research on the internet to find any additional information you need on figuring out these trig functions and their reciprocals, and I will post tomorrow trig lesson number 3. I hope you guys are safe out there. Take care.